Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen, and I'm excited to share with you the latest card kit from Tailored Expressions called Hey Lady. I have 3 card examples that I want to share with you, and I will walk through the steps and products in today's video. First, let's take a look at the kit contents. We have the Hey Lady red rubber stamp that will stamp the bodies of the ladybugs. There is a 4-piece layering stencil to add the wings, some flowers to your background, and the spots for the ladybugs. Also included is a die set, one to cut out the ladybugs in the background, and a separate floral die set to use as embellishments on your card. There is the mini strips Hey Lady stamp, and also a clear stamp set called Happy Trails to add some stamped flower images and a little trail for behind your ladybugs. We also have Hey Lady foilet panels, and there is a variety of sentiments for the inside of your cards. For bonus items that you can purchase outside of the kit, we have foilet ladybug scenes that you can foil and then either ink blend on or color in with your alcohol markers. There are 4 different patterns included in this set. Then there is the adorable ladybug envelope seals to decorate the outside of your envelope or even use as a focal point on the front of your card. These also can be purchased separately outside of the kit. And as usual, all of your kit contents come in this zipper pouch bag with a kit label on the front. Some of the additional products that I'm going to be using to create my cards today are the linen background, A2 postage stamp stacklets, A2 layer stacklets, diagonal stitched rectangles die, piece within, and the mini strips die. For the inks that I'll be using, I have watermelon, cupcake, cinnamon, sugar cube, and Oreo. I will also be using Granny Smith, mango, bubblegum, dill pickle, cotton candy, and dried fig. I also have blending brushes, a white gel pen, scissors, reverse tweezers, teal tape, liquid glue, my teal Misty, some white embossing powder, and the regular foam strips. I have cardstock in watermelon, Granny Smith, and black licorice. I will also be using some gold glitter drops, my Just Press It tool, an embellishment tool, the embossing mat, and a few other supplies included are anti-static powder tool, repositionable tape, my small glass mat, a heat gun, and white and toffee cardstock. Now let's get crafting. Placing my background down, and then I'm going to leave little tick marks to show me where my stamp set is on the grid paper on the bottom of my Misty. Then I'm going to take a piece of sugar cube cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, put a little bit of repositionable tape on the back, and align it within those tick marks that I made on that grid paper. I'm going to then ink up my background using some Oreo ink. I'll close the door of my Misty and then use my Just Press It tool to apply pressure and stamp the background over my cardstock. I will stamp it twice to make sure I'm getting good coverage, and off screen I'm going to place another piece of cardstock in that same position and stamp another background. Once this is done, I will clean my stamp set, and I'm going to bring in the mini strips stamp set to do all of my stamping at once. Once again, I left the foam insert out of my Misty tool, and I'm going to place that stamp set down in the bottom corner, making sure that my black cardstock will fit in that area. Again, I have repositionable tape on the back to secure that in place. I'm going to go over this with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to ink up the sentiments using my sugar cube ink, which is a white pigment ink. I'll close the door of my Misty to stamp that down, making sure to get those registration squares off on the sides. I missed a spot, so I'm going to just stamp that again and ink it up one more time for good measure. Next, I'm going to sprinkle on some white embossing powder, tapping off any excess back into my container. Off on the side, I have my heat tool warming up, so once it is warmed up nice and hot, I'm going to bring that over and melt that white embossing powder. I'll then take a Swiffer cloth and just buff over that to remove any excess powder once it is nice and cooled off. I can then take the mini strips die and line up those squares with the squares stamped on my cardstock, hold that down with my teal tape, and run that through my die cut machine to die cut out all of the sentiments at once. Next, I'm going to work on my ink blending, so I placed some repositionable tape on the back of my panel and secured that down to my glass work surface. And with the layering stencils, they are labeled over in the right-hand side a 1, 2, 3, and 4, so you know which order to start in. I'm going to start with layer 1, and there is also some etching on each of the stencils that shows you where the antennas that you stamped down will line up with the stencil. So once I have that all lined up, I'm going to secure the stencil down with some teal tape, and I'm going to start by ink blending with watermelon ink. I'll use my blending brush and pick up some ink and apply that through the open areas of the stencil, working my way down the entire panel of the cardstock. Then I will remove this first layer of the stencil and I'm going to bring in the second layer, and this one is going to add some flowers to our background. For the flowers, I am going to be using a light pink, so this is the Cupcake ink. Once again, just applying this with my blending brush and going fairly light-handed over the open areas. I'll remove this second layer of the stencil and bring in the third layer, which is going to add these centers to the flowers. Once again, just holding that down with my teal tape. And for the center of the flowers, I am going to be using cinnamon ink. I'll apply that color all over the background, and once I have all of those completely filled in, I can remove this third layer of the stencil and bring in the fourth layer, which is going to be adding the spots to the ladybug's wings. For this, I'm going to be using Oreo ink. After I'm done with this background, I am going to clean off the stencils using a rag and some rubbing alcohol. I cleaned off the first 3. I'm going to leave the black on this last layer because I'm going to use black again. Since I have all my supplies out, I'm going to create one more background, and this one is going to be just using the ladybugs. So if you want to use the coordinating die that comes in the kit, you don't need to add the flowers to the background. You can just do the ladybugs. So for this one, I'm going to be doing a rainbow mix, starting with bubblegum ink at the very top. I'm going to just bring in my blending brush and add a little bit of color to the ladybugs at the very top. I want to leave some room so that I can overlap and get in the full spectrum of the rainbow on the front of my card. Next, I'm going to bring in mango ink, and when this overlaps with the previous color, the bubblegum, it's going to create an orange. So I'm going to leave a little strip of yellow so that I still have some yellow ladybugs, and it can overlap with my next color, which is cotton candy. So this one, once again, I'm starting below the yellow. I'm going to work my way up and blend into it to get a green, but I wanted to get a little bit more green in there. So I'm going to bring in Dill Pickle and just lightly go over a couple of the ladybugs to really get a strong green. The last color I'm going to bring in is Dried Fig, and this is going to finish off the spectrum of the rainbow for me. So that one I added down towards the very bottom, and then also just a little bit at the top with the pink. Then I can remove this layer of the stencil, and I'm going to bring in the fourth layer of the stencil, which is just adding those black spots. So once again, I taped that down, and I'm applying the Oreo ink over the open areas of that stencil. So now we have a really fun rainbow assortment of ladybugs going across the front of our card. But we can use our coordinating die to die cut out the individual ladybugs. So I'm going to line that up with my ladybugs, and I have some teal tape to hold this in place and run this through my die cut machine. And I will repeat this with some previous backgrounds I did using the red ladybugs. I'm going to walk through completing one of my cards on screen for you, and then for the other 2 examples that I'm sharing, I will walk through the products that I used to create it. So I'm going to start my first card using Toffee Cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and the linen background stamp. I placed my background stamp in my MISTI, put some repositionable tape on the back of the cardstock, and placed the cardstock over that background stamp, and then closed my MISTI backwards to pick that cardstock up. I'm inking up the background with sugar cube ink and pressing that down. For the front of the card, I die cut out 4 pieces from the Piece Within die set, and I layered 2 of them together. This adds just a little dimension to each die cut. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast to each one by starting in one of the corners and blending on a little bit of Granny Smith ink. I want to add these to the front of my card, so once I clean up my work surface, I'm going to flip these over so I laid them out how I want them to look, and then I'm flipping them over and butting them up right next to each other. And I'm taking some small strips of teal tape, and I'm going to secure those 2 together. It's going to be easier when these are together and when I go to attach it to the front of my card. Included in the kit contents were some small flower dies that I die cut out using white cardstock, and I'm going to add those to the front of the panel. So first, I'm adding liquid glue to the back of my piece that I attached together with the teal tape. I'm going to flip this over and line it up in the center of the front of my card. Once that is secured in place, I'm going to lay out where I want my images to go. I have my white flowers here that I'm going to add using some liquid glue. And then for the ladybugs, I'm going to be adding foam squares to the back of them to pop them up for a little dimension. I also have one of my pre-heat embossed sentiments ready that I want to add to the center, so I will be adding some black foam strips behind my sentiment. I'll remove the backing of the foam strips and add my sentiment to the center of my panel. One of the finishing touches that I wanted to do is add centers. There are circle dies included in that die set to die cut out center of the flowers, but I thought this was a perfect opportunity to use my gold glitter drops. And then I'm taking my white gel pen and adding some highlights to these spots on my ladybug. And that's going to finish off my first card project. For my second card, I have a piece of white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and another panel that I die cut out with the A2 Layer Stacklets and the diagonal stitched Stacklets die, layered them together with some foam tape. I added foam squares behind each of the ladybugs and a sentiment towards the bottom. For my last card, I have my cardstock all die cut out and ready. I die cut out my background from the A2 Layer Stacklets and some watermelon cardstock from the A2 Postage Stamp Stacklets. I'm going to use the foam strips on the back of my background panel, add that to the postage, and then I'm going to add foam strips behind my postage and add that to an A2 size card front. I will also add some black foam strips behind my sentiment and place that in the top center of my card. And to finish off this one with some embellishments, I'm just going to take a white gel pen and add highlights to the center of the flowers. And that finishes off my card inspiration using the Hey Lady card kit from Tailored Expressions. All of my supplies will be linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you all for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.